Direct Connection is made by MPT to serve all of our diverse communities and is made possible by the generous support of our members. Thank you. Live from Maryland Public Television, this is Direct Connection with Jeff Salkin.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for tuning in for Direct Connection. The arrival of spring was confirmed this weekend with the sound of thousands of lawnmowers. And while nice green lawns look good, the runoff from some of them may be harmful to the Chesapeake Bay. Joining us tonight for expert advice on environmentally friendly lawn care is Mark Carroll, Associate Professor in the Plant Science and Landscape Architecture Department at the University of Maryland. Professor, thank you for being with us.
You're welcome, Jeff. Nice to be here.
So I understand you were involved in coming up with some of the new turf guidelines, and we will get into that. But why first do we need to rethink what some of us are doing in terms of taking care of our lawns?
Well, I think there's been a change over the years of what constitutes a lawn. A lot of people no longer really desire to have a lawn that's completely green and weed-free. And there are others that do. So I just think it's a shift in the perception of the public about what it is they want. I think that most people tend to like some type of lawn in a functional capacity, particularly if you have kids. I mean, they want areas to have them play in, and the lawn does a good job with that.
Where you're standing in College Park looks like it could be the practice field for the football team or the golf team. Tell me about these test sections that you run there.
Okay, so this over here is a trial that we performed. We started back in 2012, and what we were doing is we were looking at a traditional lawn care treatment, which you're seeing on the camera right now. This is one that a chemical lawn care company would follow, where it involves maybe 5 applications of nutrients over the year, primarily nitrogen, and some application of pesticides. And then we also looked at another treatment, which is the one that's over here in these large plots. And what we did here is we just applied a lot of compost. We incorporated it before we established it. And then since that time, since we established it, we didn't really do anything. We didn't apply any fertilizer. We haven't applied any pesticides. And you can see, looking at the 2 lawns, that this one is still pretty dense. And that's the whole thing when you're talking about the Chesapeake Bay, is that if you can maintain the density of the lawn, it's going to function in a way that you're really going to have significantly concerns about pollutants running off lawns. So it's all about maintaining the density. If you can do that, it's going to be a good actor in the environment.
Is there any particular type of grass seed or strain of turf on either side?
Yeah, if you look at these plots, this is tall fescue, and there's really kind of 3 elements that if you want to have a lawn that doesn't require much inputs. The first element is you really have to select the right turf grass species. So the one that we recommend in Maryland is tall fescue. It's really well adapted to our climate. And then there's many varieties of tall fescue, and we do a lot of work here at our research farm to ferret out which ones do the best in this particular environment. And then we provide that information to the professional lawn care industry, and it's also things that homeowner can access. And then the second part of that is that you got to have a good soil. If you have good soil conditions, a lawn's not going to struggle, and that means you can get away with less inputs into it. So that's why this lawn looks so good, is because before we established it, we put a lot of compost in there, and that improved the chemical and physical properties of the soil.
Okay.
And then the last thing that makes this lawn so good is that we mow it really high. If you mow it really high, then you're going to have less weed encroachment.
And why is that? Because when people cut it like they're cutting a golf green, it stresses the grass? Well, in terms of mowing, one of the reasons why you have that less weed encroachment is because that it shades out the seeds. The seeds are not going to germinate because there's no sunlight there, and that makes it much easier for that lawn to survive without those weeds. If you cut it low, if you mow it low, then you allow light to get in there, and there's also some aspects of
grass growth that it does. Most grasses don't like to grow really low, our lawn grasses, and so they struggle. They struggle to continue to grow as you mow it low, and that's part of the problem with people and lawns is they like to have a lawn that's really low. Maybe it's watching sports events and watching golf tournaments. That's kind of what they say. That's the way I want my lawn to look. But actually, that involves a lot of inputs in order to make it look nice. So the one thing I could tell people is if you want to have a lawn with low inputs, mow high.
Let me
really the key to it.
remind our viewers, if you have a question about how to get a lawn that looks that good, give us a call. We'll have the number up on the screen. You could also tweet your questions. The Twitter address is @MPT News. Professor, one of my frustrations, and I'm not the only one, I'm sure, is crabgrass. And it probably comes from not having a lush lawn like that because I don't really want to over fertilize. But any of the crabgrass preventers that you see in the store come almost always packaged with fertilizer, which I don't really want to do. What's your advice on crabgrass?
Well, when you do have a thin lawn, that's really about the only way that you're going to be able to control it is you're going to have to use one of those chemical products. And I am aware of some products that are out there where you can just buy the pesticide that will kill the crabgrass. So there is the ability to do that, but you're right. Most of them are weed and feed type products, and the reason why I think is that you're applying that fertilizer so that you can increase the density. That takes care of half the problem. But if you look, you'll find that some of the manufacturers do make products that are just to control the crabgrass without the fertilizer. They are out there.
Let's take a phone call from Allegheny County. This is Lisa. Thank you for the call. Go ahead.
Hi, thank you. I established grass on top of clay after I put 2 inches of compost down, mushroom compost. How often should I top dress the compost or top dress the grass because I'm not drilling it in?
Thank you very much.
Okay, I'm glad to hear that you put the compost down before you seeded it. You worked it into the soil. That's about the best thing that you can do long term for a lawn. Unfortunately, we have laws within the state that strictly regulate how much nutrients you can put down on turf grass as a top dressing material. And because you're using an organic material like compost, it contains phosphorus. And in our state, you can't use it as a top dressing material unless you have a soil test that says I'm low in phosphorus. If you do make the application without the soil test, then you're actually in violation of one of our state laws.
Let's take a call from Eastern Shore, Dorchester County. This is Fred. Fred, thank you for the call. Go ahead. Fred, are you there?
Oh, yes, I am. I turned the volume down. Hi, I live near the Marshy Hope Creek, and my aunt's property, and we haven't had anything done to the shore property for 10 years for anything on the soil, and it's very depleted. It's very sandy and kind of rocky. I'd like to get the lawn back in a little better shape. So what's your whatever suggestions? I'm going to take them and run. So go ahead.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so you got a sandy soil. It's not very fertile, and you want to improve the properties of it for
and you're right by the creek.
Lawn. Yeah, I think it's basically what we've said earlier. The cheapest, most economical way to do it is to apply compost. And our typical recommendation when you're going to establish a lawn is to put about 1 inch down when you incorporate it into the soil. So make sure you till it in, work it down about 5 inches. And there's enough nutrients in that compost that even in a sandy soil, you probably can get away without fertilizing it for a couple years. And it does a lot of other good things besides apply nutrients. It tends to hold water better, which is real important in a sandy soil too. So I think it's the best thing that you can do to reduce your inputs into a lawn, even in your sandy soil.
Let's take a call from Prince George's County. This is Peter. Peter, thanks for the call. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. Just concerned about my soil. It seems like it's getting hard and it's just drying out, and it seems like it's like you. I mean, I just don't know what to do next to it. I do everything I possibly can to keep it, fertilize and everything, but it just comes back hard and dry.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, your situation is very typical of what you find in new residential developments. And I bet you if you go back and follow the history of where you're located, that probably what happened was when they built the residence you live in, they took out the soil, subsoil, and they put it in a pile, and then they spread it back over the surface. And so in that type of situation, it's really difficult to grow stuff. And that was kind of the motivation for this study that we did here, is that in those new residential developments, in order to improve the properties of the soil, you add the compost. Now, one of the things you can do, because you already have an existing soil, is that you need to aerify it. You need to poke holes in the ground. That's probably the best thing that you can do at this point, and you have to do quite a bit of it to improve those properties. If it's getting really hard, the water's not getting in there, the turf grass is struggling, and so you need to find a way to get the water in there. And one of the ways you can do that is to aerate it, and you probably have to do it quite frequently. Like I said, one of the things we used to recommend is that you add compost as top dressing, but the state laws have kind of made that difficult to do right now. So at this point, I can't recommend that you do that, but yeah, poking those holes in the ground with the aerifier would definitely help your situation.
Mark, if we waited until the middle of August and drove by those nice-looking fields behind you, what would they look like? Do you water during the summer?
Because we mowed high, they usually look pretty good. The only time they start to lose their color is when it doesn't rain for 2 or 3 weeks. And in that situation, then they can go dormant. There is one disease that strikes tall fescue, and there's really not a whole lot you can do about it. The main thing is make sure you don't fertilize late in the spring, because that predisposes that grass to that disease. So in July and August, if you want to minimize the occurrence of that disease, and you can never get rid of it, it's called brown patch, then don't fertilize in June. Back off your fertilizing in June. And then let the grass get a little stressed. Don't over irrigate too, because it's really favored by those hazy, hot, humid days we get, in the middle of summer when it's sultry and then it rains for 10 minutes and goes away. That's when we run into problems with brown patch on our lawns in Maryland.
Question from Tony in Anne Arundel County. Tony, thanks for the call. Go ahead.
Yeah, I did a soils test, sent it to the University of Delaware, and it came back with high levels of lead. And I'm wondering how I can amend the soil in order to counteract that before planting anything,
Very good.
including grass that's dying.
Yeah, thank you very much. Mark,
Yeah,
where would the lead have come from?
Where the lead might have come from, I'm not sure. Sometimes it can be, it may have been an old military installation, old ammunition. I'm not exactly sure where it comes from. Sometimes you could have old products, old organic products that contain a lot of lead in them too. So, I don't know what happened. The problem with lead is it hangs around a long time. This could have been something that happened 40 years ago, and it's still in that soil, and it's difficult to get out. It's almost like you have to remediate it. You almost have to remove that surface layer. There's some strategies they use in brownfields. They apply what they call hyperaccumulators. They try to remove the lead that way. But it's really not within the realm of a homeowner to do that. So I would check and see if that lead level is really high, where it's a public health concern. If it's just a little elevated above what you naturally see, then it's probably a drastic step to go ahead and remediate it. So I'd get clarification on where you sit in that spectrum of the amount of lead that's in the soil.
Let's get one more call for you from Calvert County. This is Sue. Sue, thanks for the call. Go ahead.
Oh, hi. Yes, I have a lawn that's kind of dilapidated, and I want to grow. I have sort of little violets, some fescue, and buttercups, and I'd like to add clover to that because I hate cutting the grass and adding fertilizer. So what do you recommend in the way of clover?
Sure. The lawn on the left, this was actually a lawn. I emphasized the compost part of it, but we actually had clover, and we still have clover within this lawn. It's a special variety. It's a small-leafed clover called micro clover, and it looks really nice because it blends with the lawn. It doesn't form that big circle you typically associate with clover. It sits in and mixes with the lawn really well. So you can buy that. Usually you have to go on the internet and go to one of the seed distributors to get that. I don't think the big companies sell it within seed mixtures right now, but it's available. You can use it, and it works pretty well. We found that it cuts down the amount of nitrogen you need to apply, and we've had people out here that have looked at this lawn, and they like the way that it looks. It doesn't have those circles in it. And you will still see the flowers, so if you're trying to encourage pollinators to come into your lawn, it's going to do that. The flowers are a little smaller than native white clover, but it's really been a good solution for people that want to have a diverse mixture of plants within their lawns.
Mark Carroll joining us from the turf farm at the University of Maryland. Mark, thank you very much, and Direct Connection continues right after this.
Got an unused vehicle going nowhere? Donate it to the one place that can take you any place. Visit mpt.org/vehicles and support the programs you love on MPT.
The MPT app puts our programs right at your fingertips, so you can choose when to watch, what to watch, wherever you want to watch it. Download it now.
What happens in Japan and Asia matters to me. And with NHK World's newsroom in Tokyo, I get the news live from Japan right at the start of my day.
New ideas come out of Asia all the time. NHK Newsline reports on business, technology, and world events from Tokyo to Bangkok.
Once in the morning gives me a heads up on the competition.
Every hour on the hour, the news I want from Asia.
Watch NHK World now on Comcast Channel 268 and Verizon Channel 480.
Are you turning 70 and a half this year? If so, you generally have to start spending down your retirement account. Even the minimum distribution can place you in a sticky situation. Luckily, you can now use your IRA to make tax-free gifts. Gifts up to $100,000 will never count as income, but always make a difference. That's icing on the cake.
Make your gift for this year before December 31st. Visit mpt.org/support.
In the studio for this week's Your Health segment is Dr. Teresa York, Assistant Professor of Pediatrics at the University of Maryland School of Medicine and Clinical Director of Pediatric Hematology and Oncology at the University of Maryland Children's Hospital. Doctor, thank you for being with us.
And thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak about pediatric cancer today.
Glad you're here. This is a topic that, fortunately, the risk is low, but it's not zero. Survival rates have been getting better. That's the good news.
Yes, actually, the survival rates have improved by 70% over the last 4 decades.
How did you get into this field? It's an especially difficult field of medicine to practice, I would guess.
Yes, so my interest in pediatric cancer began when I was 12 years old. I actually did a report on bone marrow transplant for leukemia patients. And basically, I knew that I wanted to one day do something to help treat cancer and help find a cure, hopefully, for cancer. But it was not until that I was a third-year medical student on my pediatric rotation that the light bulb finally clicked. And I took care of a patient who was only 6 months old with leukemia. And I saw the distress of his family. I saw the devastation of that disease. And I saw that child near death come back to life within 2 days of starting his chemotherapy. And that really grabbed me, and I just couldn't turn my back on that because it was just so powerful to see that and the teamwork that it takes to take care of a child with cancer.
Wow. You know, when we talk about many different diseases, and frequently we hear it's a combination of genetics and the environment, some trigger factor. But in a patient that young, there's just not the time. There's not the cumulative environmental factors that maybe somebody who's been eating and drinking, walking around, breathing the air for decades would have seen. Is it more about genetics?
So basically, we don't know why a lot of children get cancer. About 5% of the time, it may be linked with a genetic syndrome. We do know that some syndromes have a much higher risk of leukemia. For instance, Down syndrome patients can develop leukemia over the general population. So we know how to screen those patients and help provide ways of making sure that we are doing good surveillance to catch it early if they're going to develop cancer.
Everybody wants to catch it early. Is it particularly important with kids?
It is particularly important for kids because we know that in pediatric cancers, they tend to grow very rapidly and they tend to have symptoms very early. And so you really want to get them very early on to offer them therapy before the disease causes more symptoms and possibly more detriment to their organs. And so you halt it as soon as you can.
Is there a particular set of symptoms that parents need to be on the lookout for?
I wish it were that easy. And in my 20 years of doing this, I've had a patient who presented to their pediatrician with sunburned cheeks. And the pediatrician was very astute and noticed that the child had something called petechiae on her skin and did blood work. And this is something that typically you need blood work to find because our most common cancer is pediatric leukemia. Not always do you present with the obvious textbook child with cancer where you have a fever that's not getting better with antibiotics, lymph nodes that are swollen, a big liver or spleen that you could only pick up on an exam. But it has very many faces, so you just really have to get your regular checkups and know when something is not right with your child and go to the doctors and take them in as soon as they're not feeling good so that they can have a very thorough exam.
Do the therapies, the menu of treatments that you have to work with, is that any different when you're looking at a pediatric population?
Absolutely. We have learned so much about pediatric cancers and how they differ from the adult cancers. They really do need different treatments. They just behave molecularly differently. If you take pediatric leukemia cells as an example, it can have the same name as the adult leukemia cells, but they may manifest different ways of targets of cancer proteins that we can target for children that they may not manifest in adults, or even if they do, and you give that therapy, they behave differently in a child than in an adult.
Is it difficult doing medical research in an area where, just doing a trial of an investigational drug, if you could do it, would be completely different?
So yes, in pediatrics, we do have more what they call roadblocks because generally speaking, in some forms, it really does need to be tried in adults first. And I've just got done telling you it's a different disease. But we do have more of a voice, and we belong to the Children's Oncology Group, which partners with the National Cancer Institute to really have a focus on offering children cutting-edge research and being at the front line, because there are some diseases that are only in children that are not in adults. So we have to have research in those diseases.
Talk about the resources that patients have here in Maryland, and to the extent you could do better by having more resources. What do you need? What would that be?
So the resources that we have here in Maryland are phenomenal. You really don't need to go to St. Jude's. You can stay right here in Maryland and get the most up-to-date cutting-edge therapies right here in Baltimore. And I'm very honored to be part of that system. We actually all belong as a nation treating children with cancer. We all belong to the Children's Oncology Group, which is a group of 250 institutions collaborating for the best therapies for children, so that no matter if you live in West Virginia, California, Baltimore, Maryland, wherever you live, that your child is going to get the best treatment that we know works for them. And that is an honor that I can be part of that team and that collaboration. Also, our patients and our families that have allowed us to use their leukemia cells or tumor tissue to help us to find new therapies. None of this would be possible without the collaboration of doctors, scientists, families, and everybody working together to really find better therapies for our children with cancer.
Do parents, thinking back to the point of diagnosis, do parents sometimes know something's wrong before it's medically apparent?
Yes, several episodes of a parent knowing something is wrong with their child. They were told it was a viral illness, sent home, but thankfully, someone listens to them, does blood work, and that's how we find out that they have cancer. But it can be very, very distressing because a parent might not know that what cancer it is, but they know that there is something wrong with their child.
When you are able to save someone's life in this situation, what's the rest of their life look like?
That's a very good question. So, as of 2014, we knew that there were 419,000 cancer survivors in the U.S., that they were treated between the ages of 0 and 19. We are learning more and more about our therapies and the chronic health problems that we cause in them. Some of them can be infertility, cardiac issues, neurocognitive delay. Sometimes our medications, they lose their hearing. These things impact their lives for the rest of their life, and some of the chemotherapy drugs that we give today may not affect them for 10 to 15 years. So we actually have a cancer survivor clinic at the University of Maryland where we follow all of our cancer survivors lifelong and help them to get the help that they need based off of the treatments that we had to give to cure their leukemia.
Dr. Teresa York, the University of Maryland Children's Hospital. Doctor, thanks for the time. We appreciate it. Thank you for joining us for Direct Connection. We're back Thursday with Your Money and Business. We will tempt your appetite with a new local lobster roll. Join us Thursday at 7. For all of us at MPT, thanks for watching Direct Connection and have a good night.
Your health segments are a co-production of Maryland Public Television and the University of Maryland Medical System.
This program was made by MPT to serve all of our diverse communities.